But this, when it's rendering to the texture, all it does is clear, use, and then render. So I assume that wrote to this frame buffer object, which is separate from the screen. So how do you pass your texture to the screen? Okay, so initially, it was using the screen. When it's running to the screen, it starts by using the screen, doing all of these renders. Then before rendering the image, it uses the texture instead. And then it does another render after it uses the texture. So maybe what I want to do is this render to the texture. Now I'm going to texture FBO. Use. Wait, does this make sense? Because it's reading from the FBO. Self.texture.use. Then it uses VAO image.render. What's a VAO holder? I have no idea how to pass this texture. Self.texture.use. Hold on. Bind the texture to a texture unit. The location is the texture unit we want to bind the texture to which we want to bind the texture. The location is the texture unit we want to bind to the texture. This should correspond with the value of the sampler 2D uniform in the shader. Because samplers read from the texture unit we assign to them. Foreground texture A equals 0, foreground texture B equals 1. Then bind textures to the texture units. First texture.use, location equals 0. So what this tells me is that there are texture units, which I guess are globals? Something like globals? And define what texture unit our two sampler 2D uniforms should represent. I wish this showed the program. So this program in text chord 0, this must be used somewhere else. Pi Cairo. It would be said in a super confusing way like that. Integration Pi Cairo. But this has to be a different shader. It has a variable called inPosition. And I think these other shaders don't have inPosition. No, they do. Nope, they do. So what is this doing? It actually doesn't clarify very much. But does texture use the position or whatever, the location is 0 in this case. And so I guess that means in tech chord 0 is automatically bound or something like that. Actually, this makes even less sense. Because in position, in normal, none of these are passed. Where's in position passed? Throwing buffers, context.py. Oh, it's doing the full screen rectangle thing. And then it's just passing in this in tech chord 0 like this. I wonder if it ever specified this texture. No, this texture has 3 components. Okay, I just got to basically guess this. So let's get a program. So this is a program as invert. It doesn't even need the invert. They really have no other texture example? There's a texture 3D. Images that have the same image format. There's a texture.read, which isn't what I'm trying to do. Bind to image, use and release. Sampler 2D uniforms. I actually know even less about this, because like, what should the vertices be? I guess all the vertices can be is just something making a square or something like that. So just keep that as invert. That should be fine. Then reading the texture? Oh, this is taking tech chord 0 as in each of the vertices. Oh, so it's reading in vertices of the texture. Then here has a sampler 2D. And then it's using this texture function to read from that. What's a v text? Can it just tell me how to use this? Uniform sampler 2D texture 1. Only defined one of 2 ways. The only place you can use a sampler is in one of the GLSL standard library's texture lookup functions. Texture, some sampler, and the texture chords. The normalized texture coordinate means that the size of the texture maps to the coordinates on the range 0, 1 in each dimension. This allows the texture coordinate to be independent of any particular texture size. A texture space textual coordinate means that the coordinates are in the range 0 to size where size is the size of the texture in that dimension. Rectangular textures always take texture coordinates in textile space. Unless otherwise noted, all other texture coordinates will be normalized. Components of a texture coordinates that reference an array layer are not normalized to the number of layers. That reference an array layer are not normalized to the number of layers. I specify a layer by index. Okay, assuming I can bind this such that the shader can actually read this, I think I know enough to do it. Okay, so maybe I take this tech chord 0. I'll take both of these, invert and in tech chord 0. Invert will just be that. And the tech chord 0 I'll pass, like so. The fragment shader will take in this v text. And it's basically going to do this. Vec4 texture of this large texture thing, yeah. Of this sampler 2D, then the v text.rgb times loom. This will just do times 1. And this will be 1. Okay. I actually think I want to have that Boolean now. This Boolean use texture. I think that could be helpful. So then I can do if use texture, do this. The reason being that I don't understand this. And if I don't pass use texture, I can do something that I do understand. Then it's just red. Okay. So now, let me see if I can just render this texture, or render this shader to the screen. So, gotta do some vertices. Don't think I'll need more than 6. I'll just make a square. So we invert 2 of them. And here I'll just have... Let me do -1, -1. Whoops. And then -1, 1. Then 1, 1. So that's the upper left. And then I can have, copy that one. then 1, -1, and -1, -1. Okay, so this should cover the entire screen. Let me add in the space for the tech cord. Text cord 0 should also have 6. And these, I don't really care what they are, because I'm not going to use them right now. So I passed those vertices. Then uniforms. The texture and use texture. Okay, so I can just do texture, program, use texture, make this false. And that's it. And so this should just render red. Okay. So let me try to compile this. Vertex buffer object. Index buffer object I don't need actually. The vertex array object. So texture prog. Vertex buffer object, then vertices dtype names. Fine. This is just none. Then I can try rendering this. Be text undeclared. This? Oh yeah, this needs an out. I don't see it. Why? These vertices should cover the entire screen. Oh wait, am I using the wrong thing? Texture FBO.use. Let me use the regular FBO. Maybe I should put that here so I see it. But I don't want to clear it. I just want to use it, I think. Great. That was actually what I expected. So now I'm rendering the large hourglass, rendering the small hourglass, rendering to a texture, I think. Then I'm rendering just this giant, just rendering everything to red in this shader. So now let me make this red block smaller. So that'll still be -1, -1. Wait, no, it won't. It'll be -1, -half. This will be -1, 1. This should be half 1. Then I'll repeat the half one. And then it should be... Wait, is half one what I want? Yeah, that's what I want. Then I think 0, 0? Then -1, -half. Well, don't know if that math's right. It wasn't, but it's kind of doing what I expected. Okay, this is not hard. I'm 3.5 hours deep. Okay, -1 is here. -1. Oh, this is not even the right coordinates. -1. -half. I think that's not even what I want. It should be -1, -1. Wait, no, -1, 0. -1, 0 is here. Then -1, 1. Then 0, 1. Then I'm just going to repeat these. It should just show me the triangle that's being drawn. Great. Great. So then to do the other half of this, which I actually want that triangle to be smaller. So -1, 0, -1, 1, 0, 1. This should be like -0.251. Great. Then all I have to do is reflect this vertex. Except this line is super random, so it won't probably be that easy. But -1, 0 is still copied. -1, 1 will become -0.250, I think. And then this. Hope that was right. Great, I did it. Okay, the point is, there are now several different renders happening. I'm rendering the big hourglass, then the small hourglass, then the square. Now what I want to do is put an image in this square. So let's see if I can do that. I change use texture to true. Well, hold on. I don't even know how to pass the texture still. I'm passing these. Passing these v text. I think this at texture, I do equals 0. Like this. Then I have to bind the textures to the texture units. And to do that, I do texture FBO, I guess? No, not the FBO, just the texture. Which is this. So I'll do the texture. Dot use location equals 0, even though that's the default. That's a default. So now I think this texture will be passed into the sampler 2D or something. Okay. I guess this texture string was bound to 0 by this string. So now I'm just going to run this again with use texture equals false. Just to make sure it didn't break anything. That's the same. Now I'm going to change use texture to true. Why did that happen? Well, it kind of did what I expected. Just not really. And I think I sort of see why that would happen. Maybe? It's gonna have to do with these texture coordinates. Won't it? -1, -1. -1, 1. And 1, 1. Okay. Maybe I just want to... I guess I don't know where the triangle starts. Does that even matter? It might. Let me reverse these. Let's see what that does. I'm going to have to learn a lot more about textures to do this for real. Okay, that did it. Too bad I have no idea why that would... First of all, why is this 1/4 the size? That came out of nowhere. So I rendered the small hourglass, we rendered the large hourglass. Here, I cleared to 0 before I rendered the small hourglass. Oh. The small hourglass is half the size of the full screen. Yeah, okay. Then I cleared to 0 before I rendered the small hourglass to the texture. If I clear this to 1... Obviously, of course that'd be white. Okay. I'm gonna have to figure out how these coordinates work. Because these are choosing the coordinates of the triangles. The triangles that are making up this rectangle. I don't know what these are. Well... Do I? Do I? No, I don't think I do. Why are there 4 of them? I don't understand that. I think I would only expect 1 of them to be here.